I would like to share them with you, and it's up to you whether to agree or not. They all are based on the mistakes I've made in the course of the pandemics or a few years before that, and I realized, okay, I better correct that. So here it is. Probably the text might be a bit too small for those in the back. Anyway, you can watch the slides later. Anyway, the most important thing here is that if at any conference you hear any motivational speaker who says, okay, these are the things I've learned and they definitely work, you have to remember about the survivorship bias. Whoever is speaking from up here might be simply lucky. So the lessons might not be relevant at all. But a colleague asked, okay, but well, yeah, might be lucky, but there might be something in common for all those who are lucky to speak. And probably the one thing in common is that they did something, and then they were lucky. So if you're not doing anything, there is really almost zero chance that you might get lucky. You have to buy a lottery a ticket first. So, I did a small survey initially. A very small survey with only 30 interpreters, mostly from Kiev. 66% of Ukrainian interpreters have lost over 80% of their income. Like 2/3 of the colleagues have only 1/5 of what they had before in terms of income. And others also, they suffer, but maybe not as much, only like 50% perhaps. My hobby is extrapolating. So there is one important thing, also for all who listen over the webcast, is that this is mostly based on Ukrainian interpreters. And of course, we all were hit by the pandemics. But here, I would say that we were really not prepared to that at all. Because the last 4 or 5 years for interpreters in Ukraine were like fantastic years. You would agree that we all had so much work, like 150 days a year for most of us, and that was really good. And some people thought that, okay, so this is the norm. This is how interpretation is going to look like. So I can build my business model on that. I can build my model on having about, say, like 15 to 20 days of work a month, maybe a bit later in the off season, a bit less than that in the lower season, but still it was the model that worked. We all had like 2 rates, a day rate and a half-day rate. Most people, they didn't even care with marketing, with advertising our services to clients, going to conferences. And for some of you, probably what Jonathan Downey said in the morning, that he was visiting the clients' conferences. I know that some of the colleagues here did it, they were doing it, but mostly we didn't care. I think I switched off the screen. It's on again. But we have to be prepared. If you were prepared to this, if you had a diverse portfolio of the clients, if you realized that this, well, might be a possibility, you were like this cat. You were safe enough. So the previous situation made us complacent. And we mostly were not prepared. I know that some colleagues said, okay, but I still had my money cushion. I had my 6 months worth of living, and I could just eat off that cushion, waiting until this pandemic is over. Well, I think, firstly, it's not over yet, and we all know that. I think next year is going to be even worse for us, because in the beginning of this year, most companies, most businesses, most NGOs already had their budgets allocated. So they managed to, like most of them, or like some of them managed to repurpose them to bring their offline events online, which was especially the case with medical conferences. They were very active in going online. So those who had some specialization in medicine, they suffered less than some others. But next year, they will not have these budgets because the crisis will be everywhere. So the marketing budgets, the events budgets, they're going to be cut. That's why I think if you haven't been preparing before, we have to start preparing now. So it's not a good time to eat off that cushion, because next year, next winter, next spring might be even more bitter for many of us. Another mistake that I've seen in myself and I've noticed in many is that we cling to the past. We had this very convenient idea of having a day rate, half-day rate, and we didn't even care who the client is, if it's a business, a big business, or an agency. We just gave, many of us were just giving this rate, but old models do not work in the new reality. Like, seriously. Neither half-day or a day rate work anymore, because RSI, which is the only, well, not the only, but is one of the ways to survive, is different now. If we talk about RSI, we've already heard today the notion of cognitive load. So we all say, okay, it's more difficult. But it is difficult because actually RSI outsources a lot of capacity which we had in physical objects to our brain. It might be complicated. Okay, I can explain. RSI is so complicated because speakers do not use good microphones. This is the biggest, this is the most important reason why RSI is so complicated. Investment in the equipment is, I mean, it's a one-time thing. Most of us already invested, and we have some good equipment. Most of us have learned how to do handovers in Zoom. That's fine. It's not the most difficult bit. But the whole fact, the mere fact that at on-site conferences we heard most of the sound from this mic. Okay, this is radio, so there was some compression, but we have been getting most of the sound from this microphone into our ears. Now it's different. Now the sound is cut, and cut significantly. I found this report on the internet. The link is there. You can't see the link, you don't care, you will get the slides. This is a website that tests different types of microphones. It can be a good way to explain to the client why, let's say, the microphone in the phone headset, which is usually somewhere over here, is not as good as the proper mic near the lip. Because here, if you see, there's a drop in frequencies in the chest mic, and this yellow bar is exactly the frequencies we need to understand speech properly. So the yellow zone is the intelligibility zone for the speech. And the headset mic up there has it, well, mostly okay, a little bit lower on the highest frequencies, but it's better. But all this works only if you have a direct sound from the mic to the mixing board to your ears. Zoom on the internet compresses that even more. They try and compress as much as possible, because most people do not have good connectivity and patch cords into the router. They are there on the Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi has drops in quality, so they want to compress the sound as much as possible, to cut everything out, to leave as little as possible, and to outsource that processing power onto your brain. Because if you cut the frequency here, physically you cannot hear the difference between male and female speaking. Like, you don't have the frequencies that help you differentiate. Your brain kind of processes these. The brain knows the harmonics, the type of sound females or males usually have. And the brain understands, okay, that must be a male speaking, or that is a female speaking. But you do this at the cost of your brain power. So if 20% of your brain is occupied subconsciously with this, then you have less capacity for RSI, actually. That is why RSI is more demanding. That's why you probably would find it very difficult to work for 8 hours for the whole day, like we did before. And even a 2-hour event can be very exhausting. So your old business model simply can't work. You can't have half the rate for 4 hours if the 4 hours will drain you completely. So we have to adapt to new things. We have to invent new modes of giving the rates to clients. One model, for example, is for like a 2-hour event, a 4-hour event, a 6-hour event, tops. And then I would charge for a 2-hour event what I previously was charging for a half day. And 6-hour is the top, and that's my day rate. And it's even higher, because even that is more exhausting, more demanding, and after a 6-hour event, I want to rest next day. So I think there's a good practice in, I might be wrong, but I think in the Council of Europe, they have increased the rates by 25% for the RSI. So if they did that, why don't you do it? So it is a good thing. In a crisis, medium rates don't work anymore. Most people who panic, they have the natural thing to drop the prices to get at least some work. You have to increase the prices. If you increase the price, you can compensate for the less days that you have and higher higher demand in terms of the brain power. So if you increase the rates, that might work. The picture here is because it's time for an inspiration story. 11 years ago, I decided that, okay, I want to be kind of a better freelance translator than I am. I went to Kharkiv. Oleg Rudavin has just published a book, Internet Freelancing, Practical Guide for Translators. And he gave a one-day seminar on that. It was useful. Unfortunately, I hoped Oleg would be here. Anyway, hi Oleg. Thank you. There was one thing that he said. He was explaining how freelance translation works, and he said that even though in Ukraine, on Ukrainian market, getting 2 or 3 cents per word of translation was already kind of decent for many, and I thought it was very well too. He said that, well, there are a lot of clients out there who pay 8, 9, or 10 cents per word for good, for high quality translation. I was kind of inspired by that, because somebody told me that this exists, that it's actually true. In the coffee break, I heard Pavel Dunayev, who was the head of a big agency, an MLV at the time. And he said, nah, there are no clients who give those rates. No, most clients, they don't have money. They only paid like 2 or 3 cents, that's maximum. You are never gonna get these good rates. I decided to believe Oleg. I never charge less than 8 cents now, if I have time. Because these rates exist. So I was inspired by that notion, by the fact that somebody said that it's true. Now, I want to take this opportunity and to say that it's quite possible, it's feasible, it's doable to charge 400 euros for a 1.5 hour long webinar. These rates exist. There are clients who are willing to pay for that. I don't say that everybody is paying that, but these rates actually are not, it's not the highest rate. The highest rate I know that like ever, from what I know, is 2,200 euros per day. I know for sure that a colleague was getting that. There might be somebody with even higher rates, that's possible, not sure, please tell me if they exist. So these rates are there, they exist, and they're not as far as you think. If you dare to dream, if your first word is the highest word, you can always roll back to something lower. But if your first word is not 400, it's, okay, it's like 100, you will never get 400. So dream big. Now, we all were relying on agencies a lot in Ukraine here, Because it was kind of, they were providing stuff, you had assignments, you had your week planned, you could just go, mostly without even investing time in preparations, because who's preparing? They don't, the rate was not that high for me to prepare. That's not working anymore. If you relied on agencies, agencies are now panicking and dumping rates and asking for a per hour rate. And next winter that they will be asking you for per minute rate. I'm sure, I'm confident that in Ukraine there will be an agency who will ask for a per minute rate. The thing is that the agency's model is built on mediocre quality. It's very difficult to build an agency that will have mass production of high quality interpretation. Because the client, when they see this good quality, they would start wondering, okay, but why that one was not as good? I want that high quality always at the sustainable level. And it's not easy for many reasons. So most agencies, it's like fast food. It's not a deluxe burger you might have. It's kind of, it's decent enough. You know, it's even tasty. It's kind of fine, nourishing. It makes you fat. You know, it's kind of bad for you, but you eat it. So most agencies is cheap mass market. It's fast food. They are not focused on quality. And if you want to be different by providing a good quality, they will bring you down. So agencies are kind of, they can be our friends, but it's rather like a symbiosis. You have to be careful. I have agencies which I respect a lot, and they invest a lot in developing their stuff. They have weekly webinars teaching the translators and interpreters as well. That's very good. Especially for new and aspiring interpreters, it's like I remember how I was learning translation, and my editors, they kind of they were teaching a lot. So editors help, and agencies can help very well, but don't rely on them always, because after all, they are predators. And on the previous slide also there was a notion. This is from a website of a secretariat. Secretariats are a thing in France and in Switzerland. It's different from an agency because you pay a fixed rate, monthly rate, to get the same services the agency is providing. But the business model is different. They don't earn on the markup on you, and it works differently. In Germany, they have cooperatives. I know some colleagues who essentially formed a cooperative. They have the secretary on staff, who also does most, she's responsible for, the person is responsible for invoicing and admin and a bit of marketing as well. So the models of cooperation, they work. In Ukraine, we don't have them, but it would be good if we had them. So once again, knowing that this is possible might help us to do something about it. A lot of people, they were thinking, okay, but it's not my job. I don't want to become an engineer to know about microphones and computers and connectivity and what a patch cord is and whatever. We have to do it now. If you don't want that, you won't be able to provide a high-quality service to the client. You will be only serving the agencies who are lost now and who drop the rates. So you'll be having less work at lower rates. If you want to do that, that's fine. But it's possible to learn. Now, when you have less work, it's a fantastic opportunity to learn. The previous presentation here was very useful. After the end, a bunch of colleagues were there asking Dmitro Ivanovich about how mixing board work and how microphones work, and essentially the presentation lasted for like for 15 more minutes, because some people are willing to learn, and it's all doable. We can use this opportunity. If you don't know how to market yourself, how to negotiate, take Know Your Worth class. I think in summer they are over, but if you go to kyw-seminar.com, You can register for an upcoming, maybe if there's enough interest in autumn, Julia Poger will repeat the online program. Take this opportunity to learn how to be better marketeer, how to be a better, well, engineer, accountant. We have to be able to do most of the things we have to be doing. Doesn't mean that we always should be doing the most. I can hire an accountant, but I have to know how accountancy works to be able to figure out if it's something easy for me or I should outsource it. We could also outsource engineering work. We could hire engineers for our projects. It's doable, but we have to know how things work. On misunderstanding value. Well, I don't have to spend a lot of time on this because Jonathan Downey once again emphasized that a lot. We have to think not in terms of the rates. We have to understand why are we there. What is our value for the client? Because it's even the task of the interpreter. The interpreter is not just interpreting words. We have to know the intent of the speaker to understand to understand the message they want to deliver. So the intent of the speaker is essentially what they really need. And that's why if we understand what they really need, we can interpret better and provide a better service to them and charge good fees. I understand that sometimes still this is tricky. This was the biggest challenge for me, to start thinking in terms of budgets. I haven't mastered that. It's difficult for me still. When a new client, when a new lead comes in, and you have to figure out, okay, so what do I offer? I have to understand what is the budget they have. I have to understand how would they value the service that I can provide to them. And I don't just give them the same rate that I give to anyone. It doesn't work like that. We have to think in terms of their budget and in terms of the value. It might look like black magic sometimes. Sometimes you still have to just do a wild guess. But once again, if your first guess, if your first offer is high enough, you can always roll back to a lower. If your first one is low, you can never scale back up. It all might seem scary. Learning, mixing boards, 2.5 jacks, 3.5, 6 jacks. I mean, it is scary. Patch cords, Wi-Fi. Why is a patch cord better than Wi-Fi? It's the same internet. Why is internet different in the wire and in this and where? It's not existing even anywhere in the field. But it might be scary. Learning new things sometimes is scary, but it's doable. Most of us already have learned how to do handovers in Zoom. Some people haven't. I mean, at the end of June, I was interpreting at an event, and a colleague, luckily in a different language combination, didn't know how to do handovers in Zoom. And that was kind of, okay, you had 3 months already, or even more, anyway, a lot of time to learn. So we have to learn and have to learn fast. So it might seem scary, really, especially in RSI when we have to, we have a lot of things. But essentially, in order to land the plane, once you learn it, you have to simply look at a few instruments. You have to look at the altimeter, you have to look at the gyroscope, you have to know your airspeed, your vertical speed. You look at 4 things and you land the plane fine, and you don't die. But this is exactly the same in RSI. We have to look at the slides, we have to interpret the speaker, we have to adjust the frequencies at the mixing board, we have to have the second device for the handovers, we have to make sure that we are properly heard by the colleague, that we haven't muted ourselves there. We have to look at many things, and we do our job, and we do it fine. If we crash the plane, we die physically. If we crash an RSI job, we might ruin our career. So all 10 advices and 10 lessons would be useless if we ruin our career. But it's like flying the plane. It's difficult. And flying a plane, I mean, it's actually easier than it looks like. In Kiev, you can go to the aviation university. They have a simulator. You essentially can learn to land a plane if you take a few lessons. So everything technical, everything non-technical, like marketing, is easier than it looks first. So don't be scared. But we still need our engineers, right? RSI is good, but it's demanding. And it's always better if somebody else takes care of you. So I try, when a client is asking, what would be the arrangement for the RSI, how can we do that? I always tell them that the best option is to have a dedicated engineer who takes care of all the things. And then I'm physically there with my partner in the office somewhere. It's still remote, it's still simultaneous. I'm physically there with my partner, and somebody else is taking care of everything, and we can focus on interpretation, and it works perfectly. It depends. Some clients agree to do this. They understand, because the value for them is very high, so they want everything to go smoothly, and it works. And then it's like the best thing, and especially if the guys from Media Stream also help organizing all the channels and all the speakers, then like you feel taken care. It's like spa interpretation. It's like good old times when you only have to focus at the speaker and the slides and nothing else, and everything is taken care of. So it is a good option, and we don't have to think that the only way is this bare-bone Zoom kind of proper RSI with good sound sometimes still exists, even though having good sound is the most difficult thing. Even when everything is perfect, even when 9 speakers have perfect mics, the 10th one probably will still use the built-in microphone and 4G internet, and you can only hear every second word, and nothing could be done about it. And I think it's the biggest problem of RSI ever. And if anyone finds a solution for this, we really should fundraise and build a monument to this person. We have to have some point of reference for all of us. In Ukraine, as soon as we start raising the matter of professional standards, most people think professional standards is about fixing some average rate that everybody is going to get and punishing those who dump. And this never works, really. People who want to dump rates, they will do it anyway. And professional standards, it's not about rates. It's not even about the quality of judging who has bigger microphone or who is better interpreting. Every interpreter has their niche. A person who interprets the best might be just bad as a person, and nobody's going to sit with them in the booth. And the person whose language skill is not that good might be a fantastic organizer and a fantastic consultant interpreter who will set up everything smoothly. So professional standards is about our consensus. It's about what we all agree we need to do a good job. And in Ukraine, unfortunately, we still don't have this understanding. We still have to figure out if solo interpretation is possible or not, or what sort of information we must get from the organizers to prepare properly. Sometimes we still have to explain to agencies why we need what we need to prepare. Like, and this was in, I think, last autumn. I get a phone call from an agency. Are you available for a medical interpretation? Okay, what sort of medical? I don't know. Like, oh, medical interpretation is like, I mean, it's the biggest field ever. If you're good at oncology, like Anya, you might be not that good as, I don't know, Anya is good at everything, but you might not be good at, say, military tactical, say, combat medicine. It's very different fields. UTIC has a new website. If you Google for the code of ethics or professional standards, the links you find will lead you probably to the old website. Maybe by now it has been resolved. So if the links don't work, and I hope that some of you would want to Google because I'm pretty sure that there are people here who have never read these documents and they think they are simultaneous interpreters. Go and read them. And they are available at the new website. Down there in the bottom, there are 2 direct links. We have to have a similar discussion for Ukraine. It might not be exactly the same. We might adapt things, we might agree on more things, depending on our conditions. But this discussion has to be going. And tomorrow, there will be a big chunk of this discussion. So make sure you join in either in person or online for the big World Cafe event. Make sure you're there because your opinion matters. It has to be a consensus after all. Because standards are there for our safety. You might think that this patch cord for RSI is not that important, that you can interpret on Wi-Fi, until the first moment your Wi-Fi, which had fantastic quality just before the event, until it fails. You might think that working at home from just your regular PC works until you have the first blackout. I already experienced both. I had my blackout on June 15th in the very beginning. So I was lucky enough. The blackout was kind of short, so it only lasted like 5 minutes. I managed to get back online, and I was lucky enough, and it happened not on my shift. But after that, I always go online on a laptop, and I have power-independent internet. In most of our high-rise apartments, if we interpret from high-rise apartments, our internets might also, the routers might be switched into the battery, but there is a router in the house, in the building, and if there's a blackout in the building, it will go down and you will have no internet. So having a spare energy independent or like redundant power, anyway, internet also is just a must until you experience the issue, and then the event might be ruined and it might cost you a lot. But the standards, it's not only about technical things, it's also about proper handouts in Zoom, because now that there is this danger that on Zoom or in RSI we have less and less of teamwork. We kind of forget this booth feeling, and I have seen that there's a trend not to help the partner as much. We can't write down the figures for the partner, all the things which kind of are proper, which are things to do. If we have a discussion about standards, we will remember about those, and we won't be forgetting, and we won't be kind of shedding bit by bit our professionalism. Another mistake that I've seen in Ukraine among the colleagues, among myself, is that we don't really do a lot of networking and conferences. I must admit, I haven't been on UTIC for kind of 4 years, something. Yeah, I've been on the first and the second one, even back in Kiev, but not here. This is my first in Kiev, here. And this is my mistake. I should have been here last year and the year before. And if you are not here, if you're online, if you were able to travel in Ukraine, if you were not on lockdown, you should have been here. And you must be here next year. Because this helps tremendously. This helps us learn. You can learn some new things like we just did from the previous presentation. I have learned also some things I didn't know, honestly, and that was good to know. We can talk to colleagues, we can understand what is going on, and we also should be able to go internationally, not to lock ourselves in our own market, in our own niche. But surprisingly, there are only a few colleagues from Ukraine who travel internationally. There were only two of us in Washington at the ATA conference. I was strangely the only one in Lyon. I know that some colleagues are, there were a lot of us in Geneva, Team Ukraine. That is good. But we have to talk more. There are about 400 interpreters in Kiev. Probably. Nobody knows for sure, but about that. And only, I would say, a dozen of them, they travel. Maybe 24 come here. That's not enough. When people are asking, okay, you go to these conferences, what does it give you? What does it pay you? You never know. But mostly, this is like one of those tickets that helps you later get lucky. You might find a colleague, and then you hear her interpreting. And you come to the colleague or her or him, and you say, okay, look, it was such a great interpretation. I liked that a lot. And you exchange business cards. And you forget about each other for like 3 months. And then 3 months after that, in the middle of lockdown, the colleague just remembers that, oh, there was the Ukrainian interpreter, and they need a Ukrainian interpreter over there, and you get a good job. Networking might help. This is like buying lottery tickets. It helps you learn, it helps you get better. So I hope we will have this room full of interpreters next year. We should celebrate the occasion, because mostly we don't come together. We work as pairs. Sometimes we go for the powwows, or we have these beer get-togethers. But we have to all talk about what we have in common and find the consensus. And associations are there for a purpose. We don't have any in Ukraine. This is bad. The first one was almost dead on arrival. It did kind of some good thing and died fast. The second one is a stillborn, but it's a dangerous stillborn, which is a zombie, because they actively go against good standards for both translators and interpreters. Like, these are almost the quotations. I kind of, it was a creative adaptation, but nevertheless, the founders think that working solo might be okay in some situations. It's not. Google Translate is fine for 95% of legal translations. You know, a founder of an association should be a paragon, should be somebody who is the epitome of all the good things. And using Google Translate for legal translations is not a good thing ever. And another founder whom I love dearly, but Socrates is my friend, but the truth is more important. If the customer pays for shit, it means it's quality shit. It's not quality. It is still what it is, even if they pay for it, even if you con them. So we must have a proper association. We must have an association which actually stands for quality and stands for what we need. And this will not be an association that will do coercion. Because the first question ever which you hear about when you start talking about a professional association is, how will we punish those who deviate from the standard? It's not about the coercion. It's not a state body. It should be about finding agreement and finding consensus. If we deviate on something, it's fine. But we have to still find what brings us together. And then it might work. So the fact that we don't have an association in Ukraine damages us significantly in COVID times, because we don't have any recommendation. If the association would publish the recommendations on RSI, say, it would be easier to promote, it would be easier to teach our clients. If we had some professional standards adopted, it would be easier for us to teach our clients, and we can't do that. So we would survive better if we would be coming together.
Andrii had saying that, but you have 1 minute left.
Okay, perfect. I have only one lesson left. But still, we shouldn't be too pessimistic. Even black swans have the silver lining over here. Like, we seriously might think that this is the crisis, and this is the countdown of the months before the demise of interpretation, as a very renowned colleague has said. He truly believes that interpretation is dying in these pandemics, and will be dying in the course of a few months. No, it's not like that. The crisis creates a fantastic opportunity, like really. You can work in United Nations office in Nairobi without having to go to Nairobi. It might, I'm sure it's a fine city, but you don't have to travel the long hauls. You can work in international organizations. You can get new clients who would never order an event, an interpretation before, but now they would. So the market kind of is shrinking, but I think there is a tremendous opportunity for growth. And when people are panicking and not willing to learn, it's fine, guys. If you don't want to follow any of these lessons or any of this advice, it's fine, really, because it's better for those who do, who does that. So the opportunities are there. We really should use that. I truly, well, yeah. To sum it up, we have to be prepared. We have to adapt our business models to the new realities, to be creative in that and increase the rates. The agencies are way lost than we are, so we have to become independent. We have to learn how to do that, understand the value, don't be scared, have some agreement on the standards, and come together and enjoy the ride. And this is it. If you want to talk more about anything of that, these are my contacts and I'm here, so this is it.
Thank you very much, Andrii, for your amazing presentation. Now we have some time left for the question. And the first one is from Jonathan Downey, who really wants you to know that you are doing a great job. And his question is, what one thing you would want all interpreters to learn to survive after COVID-19?
Learning and adaptation might seem scary, but it's fun. This is the only thing. Like, I really enjoyed diving into these microphone things, into the condenser and dynamic and headset. Like, because it's, I mean, it might seem scary, but it's fun. And I'm sure for some of you, you hate that. But there are other, like, anything can be fun. Even accounting, I hate accounting. I'm very bad at that. And there is fun in that. I might still be able to discover that, but it's possible. We can learn anything, and we are more adaptable than we think. So this is probably the only lesson.
Thank you. Any other questions? Andrii was the first.
Thank you, Andrew, for really an interesting topic that you've brought up for us today. I have it's not a kind of a pessimistic question, but still I would rather hear your comments on that. When the interpreter learns about new things, new tricks, right, he's agreeing to more tasks, really. I mean, being an interpreter, you just provide interpretation. But learning into the way the microphone works, into the way the patch cords are installed, into the way that you need to do something with the laptop, properly prepare things like that. So this is the job that in ordinary cases you would have a certain person to do. So don't you think that by doing so, right, you would inflict a situation when more and more tasks would be asked from an interpreter by a certain customer? Because, okay, no big deal, he can do like 3 things in one. Okay, I'll go to this interpreter, ready. But here is the other guy, he can do 4 things at once. And there's absolutely no need for an engineer. And he can do, I don't know, like software things, really. So I will go to there. Don't you think there is a challenge? Don't you think that still it's not the like the interpreter who has to do something with the microphone? Because this will create like a bad situation in future. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. When I say that we have to learn all the different skills, ironically, I don't mean that we always have to do it simultaneously. First of all, and learning is a prerequisite for being an interpreter. Because when we prepare for every presentations, we are already learning all the technical stuff, all the agricultural stuff, all the medical stuff, all the legal stuff. Being able to learn is the basic skill, the first skill the interpreter needs to have. So being unable to learn about mixing boards and things and whatnot, it's weird. There's something wrong in here. But I fully agree that we don't have to do all the things at once. And that's why, but we have to know about this, to be able to explain this to the client, to say, look, this is what we need. We need, if we want to do it better, we need an engineer here. We need the dedicated person, like a videographer, I guess, who will take care about switching the speakers. And as I said, it's like spa interpretation. It's very good. You can only focus on interpretation when you're able to do that. But there are situations when the client is in the US, the conference organizer is in Brazil, your boothmate is in the UK. So you can have your own engineer physically, but then it would do you no good. If every member of the team is elsewhere, there's no other way out. This is the only way to do it. But I agree that it might be too much for some. That's why it's a good practice to work in teams of 3. And I know colleagues who are already doing that. So if they have a distributed team and it's kind of physically not possible to bring all together for lockdown reasons, maybe in some cities, they still have a third interpreter kind of performing the functions of the engineer or a Zoom moderator, for example, switching off, muting the participants who have forgot to mute themselves. So if you feel that this is more than you can chew, we explain to the client that, okay, we can do this, and for this we need this person, and it's doable. But we have to know about all the aspects. It doesn't mean that we have to do it all ourselves.
Thank you, Andrii. We have one more question.
Thank you, Andrii. This was interesting and exciting. About pessimism, the colleagues in our community maybe remember me walking around some time ago and spreading these doomsday scenarios that, there might be a time when we should go online. And I was walking around customers and clients and bureaus and said, you should be offering your clients online interpreting because it might come to this. And they said, oh, Lyosha, you're so pessimistic. Was I? So, coming to the question, we've heard a wonderful presentation today from Daniel from Scotland. And I know... Jonathan, sorry. And I know I will be rewinding the record and watching it again and again because there was so much, it's so packed with information. And he gave a warning that, another doomsday scenario that the machines are after us and they're breathing down our necks. And some guy named Ron Kurzweil in Google is sitting there quietly somewhere in his lab on an island, tinkering with more predictive algorithms and neural networks and whatever. So Jonathan has said that we have a chance in this battle, and the only chance for us to win is super quality and consistent quality. It's not just today there's a good quality, and today there's a good interpreter, but as you said, tomorrow there's someone else. The clients want consistency. And you suggest that we should, as they say in role-playing games, multi-class. It's like you're no longer just a rogue or a fighter, you multi-class to something else, but if you played role-play, that eats away from your skill, which was initial. So so how do you balance? Really, if you aim, if you know that the only weapon against machines is super quality and super consistency and great quality, by multi-classing, I don't know how is it possible if you don't be flexible all the time, so that you don't spend every day sometime reading at least a piece of fiction or non-fiction. You have to watch like 20 minutes of any footage in your working language every day. And I don't know any other way to really, maintain your quality. If I go study accounting, I'm no longer practicing this. And you know how easy it is to lose, your shape. It's like in sports. You skip a week and it's gone. So how do you offer to juggle that?
Well,
and you never and you never get rid of bad microphones. There's the only way for you to be prepared for bad speakers speaking into bad microphones is to train your ear. Sorry, there's no, I don't know, maybe they will invent implants in our brains.
It might be possible that actually machine translation and speech recognition technologies someday would be good enough to compensate for bad microphones of speakers. Because if you tried, I think, I did try on Skype this feature with automatic speech recognition, and I was actually a bit surprised. It was pretty good. So it's not as good yet in terms of translation, but in terms of recognition, it's fine. So this might be actually a way out. So maybe we'll have like subtitles for bad speakers and we'll just read it out. It might be one of the ways in the future. So all hail Kurzweil for that. And still, if you don't need to multitask, if you don't need to learn other things, if you already have all your time busy, then you don't need that. But if you, like 66% of the colleagues, have lost 80% of income, you probably have a few spare days to dedicate. It doesn't take that much. Learning accounting, it doesn't take all day. The course on marketing and negotiations takes 2 days, 2 full days, and then, of course, some homework. But, I mean, it's not that much. Sometimes we are scared even before we start learning something. But it's not as difficult. And then we can, of course, focus. And now also it's a great opportunity to improve quality. Because now, I have to do this. In October, I think, Viktor Prokofiev, UTIC member, former Russian Med, a fantastic legal interpreter from London, will be giving a course on legal interpretation for free online as a series of 2-hour events. This is a fantastic opportunity to learn. So if you ever have any contact with anything legal, the high court, the arbitration, that's like an amazing thing that previously would not have been possible because he would have been busy in courts. And he is still now, but he decided to share. We can, and I'm sure that many colleagues here have already taken the class from Andrei Falaleev, who also, he was back there in Monterey, where education was very expensive. Now it's decent, and it's very useful, and it helps most of us improve our quality. So we have fantastic opportunities now. And machines, well, they might come one day, but we will have the universal basic income back then probably. And if at the moment when machines will fully replace all interpreters, all other jobs and occupations probably will be replaced by others. So humanity will find a solution, I'm sure.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have to ask the question about the quality. Thank you for this amazing speech. Probably if you're listening to this topic, especially if it has in the title something like how to survive in the post-COVID times, in the COVID times, whatever, everyone has got sick and tired of all of these topics. but they might be painful, and I feel your pain, especially about each of the questions that everyone asked. We still have to face the reality. But it is so easy to get lost in this multitude of all of the solutions and possibilities. You know, there is this saying, when you're a jack of all trades, but the master of none. So, but I have this question, like the interpreters do need to understand clearly what their trade is. It might be changing the shape, the components might be changing. You might be asking this question, do I need to do the accounting? Do I need to enjoy all of this microphone stuff? I think it's very individual, and everyone would choose their own components to add to this craft and to this trade that he or she would call an interpreting. But still, I believe it is important to focus, to stay focused. That's it, and I will say no more.
Yeah, I fully agree, and that's why we need those professional standards, because we have to remember what the profession is. Otherwise, we would become accountants, engineers, and whoever else, but not interpreters, and then we won't be able to bring any value to the client, which is what matters after all. So I can only fully agree. And essentially, like Buddhists say, that in order to develop, we have to accumulate two things. We have to accumulate wisdom and merits. So, and accumulating wisdom means understanding how things are. Accumulating merits means like doing good, being useful to others, helping others. And this is the only strategy in development. We have to look at how things are. Now in the pandemics, they have changed. So we have to look at how they are now and adapt to that. We have to try to do good, to be useful, to help others. And then we will develop and everything is fine.
Thank you, Andrii. Any other questions? So we can let Andrii go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I would like to say thanks to a fantastic team of interpreters who I know for sure, because they all are very good and they did a fantastic jobs. Thank you so much.